You know, another great thing, and you've experienced, I think, even over these last couple of days that we've been together, is worship. And it goes without saying that TBCO and the family at TBCO loves worship, and we engage in worship. I especially love, sometimes we just had this last Sunday where we heard the voice of God through an entire morning of worship. It wasn't a sermon necessarily traditionally preached, but you walked out of the place after a whole morning of worship knowing that you heard the message that day. And it came through ministers that minister through worship, through music. And coming to the stage right now is four of the best, some incredible individuals that understand what it is to have a heart of worship. Mia Fields is right here. Cody Carnes is right here. Natalie Herms is right here. My friend Andrew Holt is right here. Give it up for my friends, the Heart of Worship.
Wow, sounds like we have a band.
That's our new boy band name.
Heart of Worship. Here we are.
Yeah.
No, our new band name is
2, 3,
Honey and
4.
Locusts.
Guys, how are we? Man, I'm so excited for this talk because these three people are amazing, and we get to talk a little bit about our team and what God's been doing in our team the past couple years. But just like Phil was saying, like, you see all of this and you see the amazing people that God has blessed this house with, and I think a lot of times from the outside looking in, you think, well, they just got all the best singers on the planet and the best band on the planet, and that's why God's moving. But it's actually not the case. It's because every single person here has a heart after God, and there's a beautiful unity happening within our team. And it's actually intentional. It's something that we fight for, and something that we are passionate about maintaining. And it's not something that we just set and it is good for life. It's something that we have to really cultivate, and these three people are a big part of that. A couple years ago, we started something within our team called Worship Discipleship, where we just brought our team together once a month and ate together, prayed together, worshiped together, spent time together in unity. Because if you're a part of a big church, you know that very quickly you can have multiple services, multiple days of the week. And even in our context, a lot of people on the road, a lot of people traveling. And I think like around 2019, we looked up and we were like, none of us are together anymore. Like, we're always rostered on different times. And there was actually this like a little bit of disunity within our team of just like, we're never together, we're not on the same page. And so we intentionally started meeting at Nat and Bernie's house, and Natalie and Bernie lead it, which they are the best. And so I'm gonna throw it to Natalie, and she's gonna talk a little bit about that, but yeah.
Amazing. First, I just feel like I have to acknowledge this since it's happening, so I'm just going to say it and get out of the way. I realize when I sit back on this couch, my feet do not touch the floor, so I'm just going to get that out of the way. Like, they don't reach. I can't even put them on the table. See, it's too hard to move. Okay. So we talked a little bit about this in Leadership Co. as well, but, you know, I think obviously from the outside looking in, right, it can be really easy to go, oh my goodness, they've got Cody Carnes and Carrie and Danny and Mia and Natalie and Sarah and Hope and all these people that might have a platform outside of the church. And I think what's unique about us isn't that there's a bunch of people that are known outside of our church for a platform that they might have. What's unique about it is that all of us go to the same place and that we dwell in unity, that we worship in unity, and that it's not anyone else's name or agenda, but that we lay all of that down. And you know, it'd be easy for us to, obviously, I think all of us would say that, you know, at the belonging, just the reality of the presence of God. Like, I'm constantly confronted with just the weight of God, the presence of God, but it's also intentional. It isn't that it just happened by accident. We're all very intentional about our relationship and our commitment to unity off of the platform. And this was actually a mandate handed down to us from Pastor Henry and Pastor Alex. just the importance of being in unity and being in community with one another off of a platform. And so we started doing it once a month at our house. And sometimes it looks like us getting together and praying over one another and carrying one another's burdens. Other times it looks like just sharing a meal with one another. Other times we're having a pool party and hanging out. The point is that we have community constantly with one another. We hold each other accountable. We ask each other the tough questions. We have honest conversations, and we worship together. And if the only time that you are doing praise and worship as far as music is concerned, if the only time you're worshiping together is on the platform, then I'm just telling you right now, that's a problem. You should actually know how to worship with one another off of a platform before you ever worship with one another on a platform. What happens off of the platform is so much more important than what happens on the platform, because what happens on that platform is going to be birthed out of what's happening off of the platform. And I think that just the way that I've even grown spiritually being around, I know he said that my husband and I lead it, but we're learning as much as we're leading. Being around, iron sharpens iron. So just the opportunity to be around each other, to invite not just your worship leaders, but the ones that are singing on backgrounds, and the ones that sometimes the enemy is sneaky. He loves to remind people of the platform that they don't have, or the position that they don't have. So that means that we have to work extra hard, right? To make sure that everybody is constantly reminded that we are actually all on a level playing field. We're all pieces of a big puzzle. I said this to the team the other night, that I feel like worship is not the most important thing in the church. Right now in this moment, it seems like it is, just because people are becoming rock stars that were once church worship bands, right? And that's a phase. That phase will go away, right? It started as artists, then pastors became rock stars, and then that kind of phased out. And now worship bands are rock stars, and then that will phase out. It's just the cycle of things. But I think that the most important thing is that we understand the importance of community and unity with one another. And we also understand the importance of the weight of what we do, right? So worship is not the most important ministry of the church, but I do believe that worship creates a peripheral around, like a protection, like a fence, a barrier. When you are in the flow with the Spirit, you understand that worship is something that helps you win the war. Worship wins the war. Worship helps to deflect the fiery darts of the enemy. And so I think when we can keep that in perspective, but the only way that we stay strong in battle is to make sure that we are actually comrades, not just when we're on the battlefield, but that we are comrades when we are off the battlefield. And that's something that our team, I think, models really, really beautifully. What do you have to say about that, Mia?
One of the things that I love about our worship team is I've been there since we were doing worship in a basement. My first time I led worship in like my pajamas, because Henry asked me if I would lead worship, and I was like, for 7 people, yeah, I can do that. And I led it in my pajamas. But I kind of feel like that's still the atmosphere. Like, the atmosphere is still very low key. It's not like, come and audition, come and be a part of this thing. One thing that I love about our team is we've been slow to grow the team. Yeah. Just because I think we can have this mentality, especially in church life and when you're serving in church, that you're only as valuable as your contribution, and that's just not true. And I think if you want to create a healthy culture, you absolutely have to have a mentality that comes from the top, that people are not here and they're not valuable just because of how they serve or what they do or what they bring. They're just valuable anyway. So I think one of the things that I've loved about our team, and like the thing that I would encourage other teams, is just be slow to grow your team. Like, not that you're icing people out, but that you give people a chance to come and sit and be valued before they can contribute anything. Yeah. Cody, you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, I love that. Mia invited me to the basement when we were writing. I feel like it's always good to give you credit for that. I was one of the 100 people you invited 10 years ago or however long. But yeah, I would agree with that. It feels very much like walking into the basement in those days with 12. I think 12 people were there the night that I was there the first time. But I think, from the beginning, there's always been a culture of honor for each other. There's a genuine, I was just, this session was about discipleship, and I just thought, I'm just going to search disciple in my Bible app and just see what happens. And what was amazing is I found this scripture that says, people will know that people will know Jesus because of your love for one another. People will know that you're my disciples because of your love for one another. And I was just thinking about how there's such a genuine love for each other in this team. And I think it's brought about by a culture of honor, of just not letting those little things, cynicisms and sarcasm and just certain things that can really creep in and start to bring this kind of negative atmosphere into a team. Just kind of creating an atmosphere where those things just aren't allowed. We trade those things out for encouragement and for prophetic words and just I think that you guys do a great job as leaders, just setting that atmosphere of honor. And it's really easy to love each other when that's the atmosphere, when that's the culture. And I think too, a big part of the culture of our team that I feel like I've never experienced in any other team before is there's a safe place for repentance. And that's really something that Alex and Henry set up from the beginning. Every time we met for the first few years as a worship team and at a worship discipleship leaders night, every single time we met for years, and it still happens a lot, we had to repent. And it wasn't like this, you have to do this. It was such a beautiful, safe space to just get on our face before the Lord as a team together and just pour out our heart to God and kind of come clean and let purity be the prize in a team. And it's just amazing what happens. And it's always awkward when you start it. And then the first person does it and it's just like, we're there for 3 hours because everyone's just on the floor, But it's such a beautiful thing to have a safe space like that, to just come before the Lord and recognize things that you need to turn your heart from this toward Jesus. And I've just always really loved that. And I think, that breeds this kind of everyone's very heart connected because there's this culture of honesty and honor. And I think everyone genuinely loves each other. We celebrate each other. We're not fighting for positions or we're not conniving we celebrate each other. We recognize that we're all doing this together and we really love each other.
Yeah, it's real.
Yeah, I think it's that also births trust with one another. I think one of the most beautiful things about our team is when we lead together, there's this beautiful trust.
Yeah.
I can look across the platform on any given service and just trust everyone because we've gone there together, we've gone deep with one another. Yeah. And I think in a lot of churches in modern day worship, it's like one person who's like the worship pastor who's making all the decisions and they're leading every service, and there's not this team building up, growing one another. And at the end of the day, if I was doing that, I have what I do, but it can be limited. And if I can look across and say, there's things that Cody does, there's things that Mia does, there's things that Nat does that I can never do. And it can actually be very stingy to be like, well, I'm gonna do this though, and not actually bring anyone else.
Sometimes I want to do a really good run, be like, ah! But I can't do it. So then I'll just look across to Natalie and she'll
do it for you.
She's got it.
And then you mouth it.
And I'm like,
But I think that's the beauty. And so if you're a worship pastor or worship leader in the room, just to encourage you to look around you and say, God, who do you want me to raise up? Who do you want me to bring along the journey? And who do you want me to open up this to? Because it can be really easy to just put your head down and get things done and lead. But then you're missing the beauty of the kingdom in a lot of ways.
I think that's even just part of leading. That's something I've really learned even since coming to the Belonging. My husband and I started coming back in 2016. And, being in a field where I'd been worrying about myself for so long, right? Like my set list and putting my thing together and putting my touring together, all these things that can be very me focused. Getting to a place where you realize that if I want to help to raise up leaders that will far exceed anything I've ever done. If I'm not doing that, I feel like I'm actually failing as a leader. We should actually be pouring in to someone else or several other people to where we think, man, we've got to get them to the place where this isn't something that I'm holding to so tightly. As a leader, I think I've really, the Lord's really shown me the freedom in going like this. Man, just opening up your hands and actually sharing everything that you've ever learned and doing something to help somebody else progress in what it is that they want to do, and giving everything that you possibly could give freely so that somebody else can succeed. It's one of the most freeing things ever. It's so counterculture, right? It's like in the world, it's like you have to like have your own and you're trying to control it all. And I've seen that in the church as well. One of the things that really challenged me when I first came is that, and I understand this isn't gonna work for every place, but this is, I think, something that shocks a lot of worship pastors at the Belonging. Is the very first time I was ever asked to lead at the Belonging, Andrew texted me and said, well, what's the Lord speaking to you? Like, what do you wanna lead this Sunday? I was like, well, what do I want to lead? Like, you're going to tell me what to lead, right? Like, you make a set list and you're just going to tell me what song I'm going to do, and I might tell you if that's a good key for me. But in all my years of leading worship, I'd never had somebody say to me, unless it's my own show, like I'd never had somebody say, hey, what is God speaking to you? And it did two things. Number one, it made me feel this very heavy weight of responsibility in a good way. Like, I can tell you this, when you've experienced the presence of God and when you come into an atmosphere where the presence of God is moving regularly, if you are not in step with the Spirit, it's gonna reveal itself pretty quickly. And so for me, it was a challenge of like, man, I understand the weight of God's presence in this house, so I've gotta cling on to holiness like my very life depends on it. I think a lot of times we're thinking about what songs to lead, like what's happening right now, or we'll look at like a CCLI chart, or, we'll think like what's gonna really pop off in our service, or what's gonna work, or what do I sound good on? But instead it's like, wait, what is God actually speaking? And to even know that, I have to be in his word regularly. I have to know how to discern his voice. And I think back to just 6 years ago when we first started coming to now, it's like a completely different ball game, because I've been taught just and also I am a lot of years older than everybody on this stage. I know that's really hard for you to believe, but I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you. Sometimes I think that some people get to the place where they think that they have the thing to teach instead of the thing to learn. And I will just tell you, I have learned so much from the people on this platform right now. I have learned so much from a guy that is literally 20 years younger than me, because age has nothing to do with it. He's so mature in the spirit. And when you allow yourself to humble yourself and learn, I've learned so much from Cody, from Mia, from Andrew. I've learned so much. And I think that's the beauty, is getting yourself, even if you're a worship pastor, in here, ask the Lord what it is that your team could be teaching you. What could I learn from my team? And if you were a worship leader, begin to think, man, Lord, I want to know what you're speaking. And I can't begin to tell you the number of times every single one of us when we're really in the flow with the Spirit, when I know I'm in the Word and I'm praying every day because I'm leading that Sunday, and I don't want to just show up and do something on autopilot because I know it's going to reveal itself. So I'm like, Lord, what are you speaking? We'll all of a sudden start leading worship, and Alex is preaching, and we have no idea, and the songs are just absolutely on point, right on time, right in the flow, because that's what happens when you're people that operate in the Spirit, and that kind of becomes just like your everyday thing. And I can't emphasize that enough, that if you're a worship pastor, I know it might not work to do that overnight, but equipping and empowering your people to hear from God for themselves and loosening the grip of control on your set list, I'm telling you, it will take your worship services to a whole nother level.
Yeah. So good, Nat.
Come on.
Just one thing I was thinking about as Nat was talking is one thing that I really love about the Herms, both like honestly collectively looking after us, and they also look after our spouses as well, which is kind of nice. We get to take our spouses, which if you can take your family and keep people's family as a part of something, that's just a whole different ball game. I'm going to keep going back to this thing that people are not as valuable, only valuable for their contribution. If you're only sowing your celebration and your affirmation into people's gifting, then do not be surprised when people's identity gets incredibly wrapped up in their gifting. It's really important that, you know, if you only know your team by what they do, that's a problem. One of the best things that I love about our team is every time we get together, none of us are talking about music. We're not talking about the latest songs we've written. We're not talking really about like who led worship. Even though we really celebrate each other and say you did a great job, we're really good at making sure that we let each other know, hey, you led like a champion this morning. But for the most part, the things that we're talking about when we're together in our discipleship nights is, hey, what's going on in your life? You know, oh, you're having a surgery, let's pray into that. Oh, you guys are struggling financially. Oh, well, we could get everyone to Venmo you and that's how you're going to cover your rent. If you're sowing into that, it's going to be such a game changer in how your team operates together and operates in unity. Because I'm telling you, like, if you get a bunch of Christians together, you're going to find somebody you don't like. But when you get to know, well, I'm just being honest, it's true. There's personalities you get along with and there's personalities you don't get along with. And the only way to get past that is when you start to get to know people's lives. It's amazing how understanding just really disarms things. You know, there might be someone who you like, they're this way, and then you hear their story and you hear where they've come from, you hear what their childhood was like, and you start to actually make space for their whole life instead of just their gift. And all of a sudden you have so much more grace for that person. And I think unity is about having a lot of grace and a lot of capacity. So get to know people and make sure you're affirming your teams. Make sure you're affirming even like how people serve. Say you've got someone who's a great cook. Make sure you're not just affirming the cakes that she brings to like worship night or whatever. Make sure you're affirming people for who they are. And I think that's something we really fight for in our team is we want to be involved in each other's lives, not in a manufactured way, but in a way that like Natalie and Bernie are helping facilitate us all getting together. But, you know, we all hang out outside of those nights as well, you know, which is the ultimate goal, is that you would have friendships in church, in team, in like whatever you're doing. So.
There was cake at a worship night. I missed that.
You came during the fast and that was the problem.
I was just thinking about, you know, like the moment that happens, just this whole thing, but really the moment that happens today when we're all in the presence of God together. And, you know, when we went back after the session was over and we went back and kind of running into people from the team, I mean, everybody's got like red eyes from crying and it's like kind of quiet. Everyone was just very reflective. And it reminded me of nights that we've gotten together in someone's house and these like worship, discipleship kind of nights. And when we all get into the presence of God together, there's just, God can do so much in that moment. He can speak 100 different things to each person in that moment of just chasing the presence of God together. And it can solve a lot of issues. And I think sometimes as leaders, we can be so fixed on, I have to have all the answers, and I have to like, you know, have the answer for this person, I have to have the answer for this person, I have to solve these, when we really don't have not the capacity, but we really don't have the answers that person necessarily needs all the time, and we can feel this pressure, and it's like a lot on our shoulders. Man, just get your team into the presence of God.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, just spend time chasing the presence of God together. And it's amazing how bonding that is, how healing it is, how things just naturally kind of come together. And it really is that simple, I think.
Yeah.
I remember being a worship pastor at a church plant, and it's like, you know, we focused a lot on all the different things around what we do, about what we do, and not as much as I now look back and realize I should have. We didn't spend too much time just together in the presence of God apart from when we were leading, you know? And I think that's something so special about this team, is that we do that. And it's just amazing how everything just kind of falls into place when you do that. All the issues kind of resolve themselves most of the time.
Yes.
Well,
Can I say one
yes,
other thing?
please.
Sorry.
Please.
Quick, before the 38 seconds runs out. I really felt like to say this to some people in the room. I don't know who you are. If you've come from a toxic culture where you have been hurt, it's really tough to go back into a new culture and serve or be a part of something without having your filter be, this is toxic, this is going to hurt me, and always being suspicious or paranoid. You know, we've talked a lot about the presence of God and getting together in the presence of God. Essentially, that's how the belonging started. It was just people getting together in the presence of God and saying, God, if there's things that you need to heal, then heal them. If there's things that you need to change, then change them. If there's things that you want to say, then say them. I would just really encourage you, every person in this team, sometimes your team isn't the problem, sometimes your filter is. And like when you go to God, you know, I'll be the first to say that I came from a culture where if someone more gifted came along, then I was no longer valuable. And it's been like a really big thing for me to not believe the lie that everybody else is going to be more talented and I'm eventually going to have a use by date. Here's the secret. There's no use by date in the kingdom. You actually just get to keep ministering and like doing your assignment from here to eternity. There's no days off. So I would just encourage you, just if you're having an issue or there's a bit of a rub when we talk about team and how unified and all that sort of stuff, if there's a rub there for you, maybe just the very first thing, go to God and say, hey God, is there anything you're wanting to heal me from? Is there something I'm not seeing right? And here's the other great thing. If you are from a team that isn't as unified as it could be, it really just takes one person to start doing it differently. Even if you're not the very head, it just takes one person to start speaking life, one person to start praying into it, one person to start worshiping, one person to start celebrating.
Amen. Come on. Come on, can we thank these guys?
Come on, give it up for my friends. You guys are amazing, seriously. I love you so much. Neil, you're amazing. Thank you so much. You know, honestly, it was a year ago, May, first time I walked into TBCO, and Cody was actually leading the song Firm Foundation. My wife and I were going through a tough time that season. And I will never forget the moment. And the lyric in the song is, why would he fail now? And the place, there was like this pause. And then it was a crash of voices, sound that still ring in my ear to this day. He won't. And tears shot out of my face. I mean, it was just like the most amazing anointed moment I've ever had. And even since then, just service after service after service, just to see the humility of, I don't think they actually know how famous they are. because you'd never know it if you really knew them. You know what I'm saying? That's just a little inside thing, because people really actually know them well. Obviously, most of you do, but they don't come across that way at all. These individuals don't, and so many others in the same way of that team. So incredible, incredible, incredible.